is all about learning from each other. It is all about those mentors, that peer-to-peer support. So we've got a fantastic panel, and we've got a fantastic host again. So can we have a huge round of applause, first of all, for our host, Scarlett Bosworth from Innovate Awarding. Charlotte, where are you? You there?
Oh. Hi, Charlotte. And joining Charlotte on stage today, we have got Fiona Aldridge from Skills Federation.
We've got Scarlett Allen-Horton, who was an apprentice on the BBC show The Apprentice, and she works for Harper Fox Partners. Round of applause.
Ricky Leaves from British Airways. Pat Carvalho from the Association of Colleges.
And Ben Blackbridge, Chief Executive at Work Skills UK.
What a great panel.
Hello, and welcome everybody. So from my perspective, I think I was thinking around what does good engagement look like to me, and I actually thought about my own business that also takes on apprentices. So we're an endpoint assessment organisation and an awarding organisation, and when I started the organisation 7 years ago, we actually had 12 people. We're now a team of 200, and quite often people will say to me, what has actually made your organisation successful? And there's really been two things. One is actually being part of the process with the providers, employers and apprentices that we work with, and actually not being a barrier but being part of the success. But actually the team. So one of the things that we've worked really, really hard on, and is absolutely the main reason for our success, is actually the team we have in the organisation. I have lots of young people who challenge me, make sure that I use words like merch rather than merchandise. They actually question me around not wearing a hoodie because apparently it doesn't suit me. But what that does is actually keeps the organisation alive, different, and also that acceptance that we don't all have to be the same, and actually we can have different ideas, different thoughts, and that's the thing that will actually make our organisation successful. When I was thinking about this session today, I actually did a bit of Googling to see what is out there and what it says best engagement in this space looks like. And it was. Best engagement comes from sharing of best practice, sharing impact of benefits of employing apprentices, and ensuring it's linked to business strategies. Learning from others creates better engagement. And when I think about my own organisation, I don't think that could be more true. However, we have got other people who have got their own views and opinions on exactly this topic. And I think it's nice to start right at the beginning of our apprentices' journey, which is with recruitment. So, Pat, can I come across to you to give a bit more of an intro into your background, but give your views on what engagement looks like when we're thinking about recruiting apprentices?
Right, okay, thank you. I don't know whether this is on. I can hear it. Okay. Hi, everyone. I've got a bit of a script, just so I want to kind of think about this. So I'm principal of Birmingham Metropolitan College, but I'm also the president of the Association of Colleges, and I wanted to kind of take a broader view about recruitment in thinking about this, and then I will come back down to the college. Because I think, actually, if we don't understand the environment in which we're in, from a government perspective, and in terms of the scale of what needs to happen around recruitment, particularly over the last few years where there's been a decline in the number of apprenticeships. And that's because of all the kind of noise that there is around and the unintended consequences that there are of activities that successive governments have actually kind of pursued. So we've seen that, that kind of move to degree apprenticeships, and now we've seen a shift back, thinking about foundation apprenticeships, which is all, really good and something, shouldn't have been lost in the first place. But and then on the kind of individual level, you've got the concern around, well, what can an apprenticeship, give me? We've heard some really fantastic, panel young people who have, and adults who have been apprentices and just the value that it has brought them. But actually that's not well known. It's not well understood. And they're absolutely right that without their stories and us promoting those stories, on a larger scale, we're not actually going to take things further. And I think, so we've got loads of really good examples of how to actually do recruitment, but we don't join them up, we don't make them strategic, and actually really embed them on a really quite a large scale. And unless we do that, we're not going to make the shift. Not going to make that shift with employers. For me, the only way that you can do that is if we're actually working together. So being part of, whether it's the Multicultural Apprenticeship Alliance, whether it's being part of something in the West Midlands, the Skills West Midlands and Warwickshire group, which is about ITPs, and colleges, whether it's about working with the Combined Authority, whatever the groupings are, if we're not working at scale around and really leaning into all the good practice that there is around how to actually recruit, we're not going to make the changes. So I think we've got some parameters now with a new government who are really thinking about how can we lever and how can we make that help to support that change. But I still don't think they've gone far enough in terms of that incentivising of employers. Giving that incentive, I think it's £2,000, isn't it? £2,000, whatever, is all well and good, but it's money that can easily go. You need to build into a structure, whether that's about, giving incentives around a business rate, which, employers will understand. They understand that. It's something that exists for them on an annual basis. You need to actually do things that are going to kind of exist beyond whichever government, is around. So I think for me, around recruitment, there are things that we've got to do collectively to really make things different. However, I couldn't, I do think, in the West Midlands, we've got some really, a combined authority that genuinely does understand what needs to happen, and they are thinking strategically about how we can actually, make change, whether that's, about the levy transfer scheme that supports, really thinking about employers and their engagement in apprenticeships. That promotion now through the different changes that the government has been leading on in terms of bringing together DWP and careers. They're quite significant changes that we could really make sure that we can help to shape to make a difference around recruitment. But I think in terms of thinking of ourselves as a college and what we do, for me it's about parity of esteem for apprenticeships and how we promote that within our own college environment. We have a whole, I've got 5,000 16 to 18-year-olds who come to BMet each year. And I think about that parity of esteem for apprenticeships and the opportunity for employers to see a massive talent pool just in BMet alone. And if we actually worked collectively, what that could mean, for employers and how we can actually make a difference. But making sure that we think about that parity of esteem with the rest of what the other programs that we offer. Demystifying apprenticeships is absolutely critical, both for parents and carers and, for the young people and adults who are thinking about it, but also obviously that demystifying for employers. And that challenge about the potential bias, because we've all got bias, in terms of thinking about apprenticeships. And I'm not just talking about employers here and how we are in terms of our workplace. I'm actually talking about the young people and parents and their view about what an apprenticeship is. And I can still hear, a parent saying, I thought it was just construction. And it's so much more than that. And we all know this. But how are we actually, leaning into how we promote that? So those are the sorts of things that we work on, at BMet. And so I think I'm actually going to stop there, just to give you your own view. Sorry about that. I didn't go into any detail, but you can ask me other questions.
I mean, what I think is there's 2 points that I think are really, really interesting in what you've just said, is that piece around construction, where actually if you read a lot of the government information coming out at the moment. It is all about construction. And we all know here that that isn't the case, and we've all seen the benefits of apprentices, foundation apprenticeships outside of construction. The second point that I just wanted to pick up on is around that careers advice and the importance of that, where, again, the curriculum assessment review has recently come out and there's no mention of the importance of careers advice and support, and that has come out as a key theme, as having those mentors, different people are actually supporting, promoting and actually ensuring you're aware of the opportunities is absolutely key. So I find it's fascinating that they were two areas that you picked up. Scarlett, if I can turn to you, and I will hand you a mic, I don't expect you to boom, although you're a celebrity, and she has been on BBC Apprentice. But I won't steal your thunder. There are lots of different demographics, different individuals, different needs that we're trying to aim to get engaged here. Can you give your view of what engagement could look like with so many different diverse people, diverse backgrounds, different needs? Can you give your insights?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the little introduction there. Hopefully I'm not booming to the audience. But yes, absolutely I'd love to. And aside from being on The Apprentice, being business partners to Lord Sugar, I actually own a diverse executive search recruitment firm in the UK as well, and we service right across the UK, Europe and the US within STEM markets globally. And what I'm really, really passionate about is placing more senior females, more ethnic minorities in senior positions. That demographic is really important, and because of the work that I've been doing in that space, it's led me to actually have a lot of fantastic exposure to apprentices, mostly from a client perspective, which is interesting and might gauge maybe a different opinion, rather than necessarily within educational institution. And in terms of the attraction piece, what I've really seen is that, number one, representation really matters. And when I say that, I mean that actually to really attract, different kind of demographics, different sorts of schools of thinking and experiences, because it's all of those things, perspectives is ultimately what we're talking about. We need to have people within those recruitment processes, within those hiring or deciding positions, in terms of bringing apprentices on board that are reflective of the individuals also that we want to bring into those educational institutes or businesses. I think that's absolutely critical, and in doing that really creates, I guess, a sense of belonging. Straight away it's like, oh, well, you're doing this, wow, that's so inspiring for me. And I know myself personally, I've got 17 years experience in recruitment, and the first question I asked myself, I was never an apprentice through an educational route, just the BBC, but the first question I remember going into that organisation and asking myself was, can I be the CEO of this business? Because nobody looks like me, nobody can relate to my circumstances, and is it possible for someone like me? And I was 25 when I was asking those questions, and I know there's apprentices through lots of different plethora of ages now, which is amazing to see. But the reality is that that representation piece is so important, and it reaches so far. I think aside from that, we really need to ask ourselves, are we building out educational institutes and businesses that are going to be really accommodating, psychologically safe and welcoming of all different demographics? So is it going to be, that you've got a culture within your organisation that is really promoting a sense of belonging? What happens if we're seeing things that, like microaggressions, those sorts of things, and the people are feeling uncomfortable? Or how do people challenge that? Are we educating our people and making sure that there is a process, or there is a way, or there is a conversation around advocacy, around allyship, and those kind of conversations around culture, I think, are just as important as the conversations around attraction as well.
So what the piece on representation, I think, is quite an interesting one, and we heard from apprentices from Lloyd's as an example earlier, where big organisations who have the infrastructure and the support in place to actually really support different backgrounds and ensure different representation. How do we make that happen in small businesses as well? Is there any techniques or ways that you've come across that you could share?
Yeah, brilliant question. And I'm really pleased that you asked that, because that is the reality, isn't it? We've got a lot of small businesses that are actually investing in apprentices, and they're also thinking, well, do we have, recruitment teams and talent teams that are able to put all of these things in place? Or actually we're a business that's trying to survive, do well, and actually bring our talent with us. And I think for me, it's around conversation. It's a really open, transparent conversation around, as a team, as a business, how do we do this? And I know we've heard things like, diverse interview panels. So is it that we can, maybe if even in our own business, there's not the diversity that we'd maybe like to see, but actually are there other people in other businesses, sometimes suppliers, customer base, allies, where we can ask them to come into interviews with us? Again, having conversations. We're really excited to attract different perspectives into our business. We think an amazing way to do that is through an apprenticeship programme. But what we want to make sure is that whoever's coming in to interview in this process, is feeling really comfortable and related in this environment. And I've seen that work extremely well as well.
I promise, just one more
That's
question.
fine.
And I didn't pre-warn you about this
No,
one,
don't worry, don't worry about
don't
that,
mind me
that's
throwing it in. And I've seen this in my own organisation, actually, where you have somebody interviewing and they might be scared of employing somebody who is very, very different to them, their norms, what they know. And I slowly saw a team creep where everybody looked the same and acted the same.
Yes.
And that can also happen in organisations. So what else can we do to equip individuals so they feel more confident around employing different people who may be far away from what they know as their norm? What techniques could you suggest?
Yeah, absolutely. Love again that you've asked that question. So as a human race, we are attracted or relate to what we know. So if I was to speak to you as a woman, for example, there's something we can relate to. I might speak to somebody else as a parent, or actually you might have the same hair colour as me, or you might have the same heritage as me, or you might support the same football team as me. Straight away there's an affiliation, and that makes us feel safe. So it's not that necessarily people are realising that, oh gosh, wow, I'm just feel really comfortable speaking to somebody else like me. It's just that we're inherently built that way. And I think as soon as we start to realise that, it's that we really are having to challenge ourselves. And I don't know if you know the number, if anyone in the audience knows the number, but do you know perhaps when somebody comes on stage and starts talking, how many biases subconsciously we can draw or we come to? Can you imagine the amount? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
It's going to be horrific, isn't it? It's
Take a guess, be brave.
35.
Yeah, so it's from 150.
Wow.
So it could be, so it's not all of those at the same time, but 150. So that's the amount of potential biases that we're just not even aware of, that we all have, just to be clear about that, or can kind of come from. So I think it's really having an awareness around some of those things. And, I spent a lot of my corporate career trying to fit in, thinking, I want to get to the top. How do I get to the top? Right, I won't talk about having children. That's not going to be relatable for the people around me at that time. I won't talk about this. I won't talk about that. And actually, I'm at a point now where I realise that really using what makes you stand out is so powerful versus what makes you fit in. And I would say, in answer to your question, I think it's about having really honest conversations internally, touching on the things that I've maybe just touched on, because it makes you think, and you think, oh gosh, yeah, and also challenging yourself, and knowing that person that's different to maybe has a different perspective or a different journey through life, different university or no university experience, whatever that is, that actually they can bring something very different to the table. And we're in an environment now, we've got AI and we've got all of these amazing things happening, scary and amazing things happening. And we know as business, the things that are actually so important are going to be really innovation, which comes from diverse perspectives and different solution makers around the table.
Got a session next on that. Good.
There we go. And is also what was I going to say? Innovation and different perspectives. Like, that is the reality. Those are the things that are engaging for not just apprentices but for employees as well. So there's just so many benefits aside from that.
Brilliant, thank you. Fiona, are you okay if I come to you next?
I am.
Our apprenticeship system would not work without employers, so that engagement with employers in the system is a massively important thing, and your organisation represents those employers. Can I kind of just get your perspective and view on how we go about engaging employers?
Certainly. So Skills Federation, of whom I'm the chief exec, it is a federation of employer-led sector skills bodies. So those organisations thinking about the skills needs of particular sectors, representing about 150,000 employers. We also actually certificate apprenticeships in Scotland and Wales and do some work around endpoint assessment in England. So actually we've got lots of data from apprentices and their journey, as well as all those conversations with employers. And it's just been really interesting actually to hear their perspective. I've worked in the skills system for 25 years or so, but getting an employer perspective is so valuable. And you're completely right, because actually an apprenticeship is not a FE programme, it's a job. And if it doesn't work for employers, therefore, that job is not there. Having moved about 6 months ago to take on this role, I've been really thinking about my own business, as you say. People are my biggest expense, but they are also the thing that will determine the success or otherwise of my business. So who I recruit, who I appoint, whether that's an apprentice or not, is really critical. And I think we really, really have to bear that in mind when we're trying to engage with employers. So I don't want a training provider to come and sell me a product. I want them to come and talk to me about my business and what my challenges are and what I need from my people, and help me understand and appreciate and investigate how I can identify and solve my training needs. And just to say, and I know this is an apprenticeship conference, sometimes it might not be an apprenticeship. So rather than shoehorning an apprentice into it, maybe it's something else, but actually perhaps it is an apprenticeship, and they are phenomenal. The panel earlier was just incredible, wasn't it? Wouldn't you want any of those guys absolutely working for you? So I guess from an employer perspective, I would really want a provider to understand my challenges and my opportunities, and think about how an apprenticeship and how your support for an apprentice can really help them to thrive. How can you tailor that apprenticeship experience to the needs that I have in order for my business to grow? The particular circumstances of my business, the particular context, the particular size, the particular place in the market, and quite importantly, how are you going to make it simple for me, and how are you going to support both me and the apprentice to make this an experience that really works? I was thinking about some of the sort of things that you can do along the journey that makes it really well. That early engagement is really important, isn't it? Setting those roles, clear expectations of what I should do as an employer, so that I know this is not just a cheap bit of labour, but this is me investing in the long-term workforce of my staff. What I can do, what I can help you with as a training provider, but what I can expect from you. How I can support that apprentice. In all the research about apprentices, we know that one of the biggest success factors in terms of why apprentices stay and succeed is about the person who supports them in the workplace. So identifying and training and communicating with that line manager, with that person who's going to support them to make sure they are best placed to serve the particular needs of those apprentices. Making sure that the training that's offered is not just your standard off-the-shelf training, but really thinks about my business and the other businesses that you're engaged with. Of course, you're operating within an apprenticeship standard, but there's so much you can do to make it really work within a business. There's something about ongoing engagement, so it's not just a start and off they go, but you're continuing to have a conversation about what's working, how you can make it better, how you can really invest in that apprentice succeeding, as well as succeeding for that business. And I think just that sense of, this is a really big investment for an employer, but one that can absolutely be the future of their business, and making it work for them and really sort of co-collaborating on that together, I think is a great way of securing employer engagement for this particular apprenticeship, but making sure that as an employer, this is something I want to carry on investing in, something that I want to grow, and something that I want to see my whole workforce actually being full of current, previous apprentices, and just recognising that that's a great investment for my business.
Lots of good tips there, and it's great to see that already, your new approach is taking your business forward. One of the challenges that we know that we're facing within the apprenticeship sector is less young people taking apprenticeships. What else can we do? And I don't think that's apprentices not wanting to. I think it's, sometimes employers see it as a bit of a barrier. There is a lot more pastoral support. We know there's more likelihood of English and maths being an area that needs to be covered. What can we do as a system to support employers to recognise the benefit of having young people? I've certainly felt it in my business when I've taken on young apprentices. It is harder work sometimes, but actually, I'm now really reaping the rewards of that, and they all remain within my business. What would you suggest we need to do?
So it's a massive issue, isn't it? There's nearly 1 million young people not in education, employment and training, and yet we know that an apprenticeship is both fabulous for an employer, but is a really critical route for young people to get into the labour market, but fewer opportunities available, just as actually there's more interest among young people in doing them. Prior to working at Skills Federation, I worked at the West Midlands Combined Authority, and one of the things that we did was we set up a programme called Path to Apprenticeships to try and create good pathways for young people who might not normally get access to an apprenticeship to find their way in, but also to de-risk it for employers, because what we were saying was we'll provide young people with that support, we'll give them some experience of the workplace, we'll do that bit of training and work experience that will enable them to have the confidence to go into the workplace, and so that employers could take a bit of a risk on it and young people could get a sense of what that experience is, because we all needed support to get into the workplace. We might think all sorts of things about our young people not ready, but none of us were ever ready, were we? We've just forgotten that. So those pathways through are really important. And then if as employers you're thinking about opportunities, think really hard about what you're asking for. If you are asking for people to come with experience, then you also need to think about what experiences you're offering to young people. And actually, do you need people to come with experience, or do you need enthusiasm and aptitude and a passion, and then you can give them that experience. One of the things we also found in the West Midlands is that although it was not required in apprenticeship, too many employers were saying, oh no, you've got to have GCSE in English and maths beforehand. That wasn't required, and actually it was a barrier for many of our young people that could be absolutely brilliant in your workplace. So really thinking about how you can get involved earlier in the system to open up your business, to create those great ambassadors that want to come in and work for your company, because actually having those, the young people on the previous panel shouting from the rooftops about the benefits of your business, you couldn't afford to pay for marketing like that. And actually being able to do some of that work is great, and we need to step up and do more of it.
So do you think foundation apprenticeships are a good thing based on what you've said? Have they stolen the idea from the West Midlands Combined Authority?
I absolutely think there should be some pre-apprenticeship, some routes in. I guess none of us are quite clear what a foundation apprenticeship is yet. I think from an employer point of view, one of the big sort of credibility about an apprenticeship is that it's a job, and that when someone finishes their apprenticeship, they are occupationally competent. And I think we have to be really careful about creating sort of spin-offs of apprenticeships that don't deliver on that, because I really wouldn't want to weaken the brand. But there's absolutely a role to play, particularly in places, for creating really good access routes to getting great apprenticeships.
Brilliant, thank you. You mentioned the importance of that mentoring somebody in your business who supports. So I'm going to hand over to Ricky, and just wondered if you can pick up on that theme around actually how do we, once we've got an apprentice in an employer, how do we retain them? How do we keep them engaged? We know leavers is a massive problem. How do we actually get them to the end? I'd be interested in your view.
Thank you very much. So I think it's a lot of it comes down to the support that you offer those young people during their journey, right? But it also goes back to the very beginning, because if they feel that they're part of your organisation from the day that they step in the door to interview, they're in, right? You've almost got their attention, and you've got their buy-in, and you've got their loyalty. And some things that we've done and this is going to sound like I'm saying we're the best thing since sliced bread, and forgive me, right? But we've implemented a couple of things that make a massive difference. So we've got one individual in my team, Chloe her name is, she'll die that I've said her name out loud, but she is a SEND specialist. So when we're going back to what you were saying before around neurodiversity and different, backgrounds and diversity, she spends time with those individuals and really drills down into what does a supportive journey look like for you as an individual. Rather than it be a one-size-fits-all, we look at that, put a support measure in place, and then for the other people in that cohort, they're then given opportunities to go out and network with other individuals across the business. We set specific projects. We are very lucky for those that fly British Airways. We have Flying Start. Everyone should know what that is. Our lovely charity partnership with Comic Relief. We get them to do a lot of projects and fundraising with the Flying Start in mind. So it buys, I say buys, it doesn't. It lends to loyalty to the brand. Because for quite a while, we rely a lot of businesses rely on their brand, but that only gets you so far. And I think it's just to a couple of other points, that people have made previously. You can't buy that type of coverage from an apprentice saying that they love working for your organisation. But again, it goes down to that support mechanism. And another thing that we've implemented is an apprentice council. So, as part of apprenticeships, British values is a massive thing that we want democracy to be part of. We've given them that and empowered them to do that so they can sit down, they have elections, it's a fully formed process, but again, they're empowered and they own those decisions, and then they bring them to me and my team. We then say, can we make it happen, can't we? Or we send them away to implement it themselves. So it's all about that empowerment and ownership of something, because if they don't feel a sense of ownership or a sense of belonging, of course they're going to exit the organisation. So that, for me, is a real key part. Grab their attention, grab their hunger, their potential. Because we, again, doing recruitment, we don't recruit for the finished article, we recruit for potential. Because a lot of people will come along to assessment centres and they could be wearing a scraggy old pair of trainers, a ripped pair of jeans and a T-shirt that they've had for 12 years or so. But that's not a judgment that we make, because as a business of flying people from A to B, sometimes your bags don't arrive, right? So we can't make that decision or that judgment on what someone wears. So then we feed that throughout the journey of that you don't make judgments based on someone's behavioural issue in that moment. You take a step back, you build a bigger picture, and then you have that conversation with those individuals, because they are colleagues at the end of the day. They just happen to be on an apprenticeship pathway. And I've done my usual thing of rambling on and probably gone off topic.
Not at all. I mean, the piece that was interesting there is around having those forums for support. And quite often I hear how having that tripartite, that line manager who's there to support you, but also another mentor who's somebody you can go to who's maybe been through an apprenticeship themselves. What do you have in place around that, and what do you place on the importance of that, of retaining your workforce to complete?
So we have, in I think it's about 3 weeks, we've got an apprentice forum where we bring them all together. We're currently around 400 apprentices, so they come together in one room and we have an apprentice panel. We have a previous apprentice panel where they say where their career has gone now. We build a network that way, so it's that opportunity to integrate with previous apprentices. And I would never use the word ex, because I think it carries a very negative connotation across any apprentice. So they're either previous or former apprentices. But it just then organically builds, because you have this group of 400 people that they may never have met before, but after that they know who to go to if they want to find out a bit more about engineering, or they want to find a bit about our distribution centre, or even our engagement centres across Manchester and Newcastle. It's that opportunity for networking. And we also do a line manager training. So if we are placing apprentices around the organisation, we bring them in and tell them around what's the compliance elements, what's their 1 day a week that they need for their off-the-job learning, the performance metrics, the generational differences, which is something that we heard about at the ATC conference, right? And that is becoming a much bigger part of how we as an organisation are approaching apprenticeships and younger people that are coming into the organisation, and the different generational differences that we are seeing.
I'm going to go back to a point that Fiona made, which was around, actually, I want the provider I work with to understand my business. How important do you think that then plays through into the retention of individuals as well, that their learning coach, the provider they're working with, actually understands your values, your business, what you're trying to achieve? Do you think that supports with engagement and retention?
Absolutely, yes. So we invite all of our training providers in before we start working with them, and we put them through what we call a Welcome to BA course. So every one of our colleagues goes through that course. They understand our core business, our values, our hallmarks, our vision, all of that. But we put our training providers through that too, so that they understand that. But we also manage our training providers as if they are subcontractors of us. So we have governance meetings and we ask them for regular progress updates, and we then go through and say, right, well, we've seen a trend here where there's a high failure rate across one of the exams for the engineering scheme. Help me understand that. And so we really delve down into the detail, and probably too much, and they probably hate us. But that's because we still have that brand protection aspect that we have to approach. And if we are seen as delivering substandard apprenticeships, it's not AN provider that is front page on the Daily Mail, because it's usually them, but it will always be us. So that's why we take that cautious approach to that. But we make sure it is instilled in our training providers from day one.
I actually think all your training providers would welcome that, the fact that they've got an employer who, you know, wants the programme to work and wants to work with them and will hold them to account. I think most providers would welcome that level of challenge, in all honesty. Ben, can we come to you? You have the most exciting part, because you don't have to just deal with the UK. You get to see what's happening internationally in relation to apprenticeships and engagement in skills as well. Is there any kind of tips, anything that you've learned from both the competition side and the work you do internationally that we can learn around better engagement?
Yeah, sure. And it's nice to be, I guess, the person who comes last who hasn't got to cover all the really good substantive bit. I can just talk about the nice kind of things that sit around. And so if you don't know, World Skills UK represents UK skills in World Skills, which is 89 members around the country, around the globe, and then also looks at how do you bring back skills excellence into the UK and how do you really promote the importance and the value of skills excellence. And so, for me, the work that we do and what we see, there's always, and this is I don't know if anyone used to watch The West Wing, it's kind of aging me a bit, but there's a bit in there which talks about, at the end of a State of the Union, where it's gone really well, and someone says to someone else, that was brilliant, and they go, well, it's just flash. And they say, sometimes a bit of flash is just what you need. And I think sometimes with apprenticeships, and with skills in general, we need a bit of flash, and we need a bit of celebration, and we need a bit of the stories we heard today, and the sense of where things take you. And I think sometimes we can get a bit bogged down in the product and not think about the end result and where things go. And I think you can do that, but you've got to also have substance as well. And so what we see around the world is you need to put those two things together. So you need to have flash and you need to have substance. And for me, those kind of come through in two very quick examples. And one is when we talk about what an apprenticeship or what skills development can do for someone, talking about it in the context of choice and freedom, and the fact that it gives young people freedom they might not have had to choose, whether it's to go and work for a multinational, whether it's to go and change skill completely, whether it's to open their own business. And the work that we do, working directly with young people who compete internationally, is you see such a vast end point for them, but with all of them there's agency and there's a sense of choice in that. And so I think there's something for me when I see things that really work, and sometimes it's the ones you'd expect. It's the Austrias, it's the Switzerlands, it's the Germanys, but it's also places like Japan, places like Hungary, who are really kind of focused on that end point and where these apprentices go, and it's normalised. Now, I guess the pushback for me on that is, well, it's cultural and we can't do anything about culture. And I think you can't do anything about culture if you think you can't do anything about culture. But it's going to take time, and I think there needs to be looking at how do you change these things from a kind of cultural point of view. And that kind of brings me on back to the substance point, which is if you look at Germany, if you look at Austria, Switzerland particularly, but also Japan, Brazil, there is stability in their skill systems. There is 20 years of it not being touched fundamentally. But that's not to say it doesn't get improved or move forward. It does, but the bare bones or the framework or how it works is stayed the same. So you can focus on things like how to implement shorter apprenticeships in the right way, in a measured way, how to look at how you pay apprentices what they should be looking at. How do you think about having comparative to an academic route, which is as simple, rather than thinking about having to go back to basics again. And so this would be especially at the moment when there's so much change again, is in this room, these people in this room live and breathe apprenticeships, and we don't quite know what is going to happen. And it takes us a while to explain what's happening now, whereas there is a real simplicity, and there always has been, in an academic route, GCSE, A-level, university. Now, I know that's not true. I know there's multiple routes, but that's what people know. And so for me, there is this link between how we talk about skills as the end goal and what it does to give freedom and choice, and I guess it would be opportunity in current government speak, for young people in terms of what they do and where they go next. But then also, can we focus on working with what we've got to make it better and make it more easily understandable, and stop trying to, I guess, get people who don't need to know the inner workings to know the inner workings, and just understand this is a high quality thing, it moves us in the right direction, it gives young people choice, and it gives employers the skills that they need.
I think the stability piece is a really good point that I think everybody would agree with. And I mean, the piece that I take from that and from today is we have actually got an apprenticeship system that we should be so proud of, and we should be celebrating it more and more. And too often there's the criticism of it, and I'm bored of us being compared to Germany, and I genuinely am, because we actually have a system that we should be so proud of, and the people in the room have made that work and happen. So I think you should give yourself a round of applause for what we do achieve in relation to apprenticeships. Okay, shall we open up to the floor for any questions for our panel? Kazim, are you around with the box thingy?
Firstly, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the valuable insights that you've all provided, and just talking about the amazing work that you've done with regards to apprenticeships. It's been really good, and obviously as an apprentice myself, it's been really nice to hear from other organisations about the differences that you have in your organisations, but how you're doing really good work to the future of apprenticeships as well. But my question was kind of regarding what plans you have or any actions that you'd like to take, maybe before the end of this year or just for the future of each businesses that you're all involved in, to kind of better support the outreach of apprenticeships, because it's been really nice to hear about the engagement that you've had so far. But it was just kind of getting a better understanding about any actions that you've got in mind. It'd be really insightful to hear about that, or any goals as well. Thank you.
I'm happy to start and then hand over to others, just so I take some responsibility myself as well. So I don't have enough young apprentices in my business. And part of that is because of the support and nurturing that we know we need to put in place, but I also know the value. So there's a piece around us working through exactly how I have, and learn from people like Ricky I could put some forums in place, I could put some different types of approaches that could really help bring that future talent in my business. And I think that is my action that I'll be taking, that I need to take more responsibility and ensure that I have more young people and more young apprentices in particular in my business. So if I'm invited back in 12 months' time, you can challenge me on that.
Shall I go next? So I started my job 6 months ago. As I said, it's certificate apprenticeships, but it doesn't employ any. So my challenge is to employ its first apprentice for a while. So I'm very excited about being able to do that. The other thing I really want to do is, I mentioned briefly the systems that we have to certify apprenticeships, and behind that is so much rich data about apprentices' experience. And one of the things I'm trying to do at the minute is to be able to unearth that, to be able to understand some of the questions we've got, to think about how we can use that data to shed a light on some of the things that are particularly helpful and particularly difficult in the apprenticeship experience, that we can, without throwing the baby out with the bathwater, just generally tweak the system to make sure that it continues to get better.
Great question.
I see that we actually work with quite a lot of young people in colleges, just as sort of pro bono, talking about the STEM sectors in particular, and really trying to entice amazing talent. So I think we are committed to continue doing that. We've also sponsored towards some young people going into training and education within STEM sectors. So maybe there's a commitment there that we do a little bit more there. You've got me thinking now, which is brilliant. I think the pivotal role that we can play actually is with our clients, so those employers, and connecting them more with apprenticeship route candidates, because that's where I see actually there is a disconnect sometimes. We've got clients that are like, wow, we need amazing apprentices, and then you sort of I go to amazing events and hear then, you know, people saying, well, we've got all these amazing apprentices and we need employer opportunities for them. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I think there's a piece of work that, you know, we can do there. I will take that with me. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I would like some more clarity around the next decisions that government are going to make. Sharon Blyfield's smiling at me, right? So that's going to enable us to make better informed decisions of how we as an organisation push forward. So if we've got the skills and growth levy that is coming in, what does that mean? What does it look like? Are level 7 apprenticeships going to be defunded? Is it some? Is it all? Is it none? Without that clarity, that makes your question quite difficult to answer. But we are very content with running what we've got now because it works. But once we have that answer and better understanding, that's when we'll start looking at how can we make more of a matrix of additional skills that we can add to benefit apprentices, rather than just split it in half and think, woohoo, we've got X amount of levy money to spend on non-apprenticeship stuff. So that's my commitment, is to still use the skills and growth levy to benefit apprentices. Oh, you've got this one?
I think for us at BMet, one of the things that we've really trying to push, and that is around being an inclusive employer, because we're not just a provider. We're also an employer, a large employer within Birmingham, and for us that is about apprenticeships. It's about supported internships and how we actually, as an employer, act as a good employer in that respect. So that is something that we are absolutely focused on, in terms of being an employer and developing our own apprenticeships, and we've done that in a number of ways, and that's something that we want to continue to do. So we're looking at all our entry level roles, and what and which of those that we can permanently, if you like, properly think about. So it's not just done as a one-off; it's actually part of the workforce development. And going back to what Fiona was talking about, as an employer, that's what you want, a provider to be able to do. So we have two hats whenever we're looking at things. And then the final thing really is very much something that for Birmingham that we're really clear about, that we want to be part of, and that is about supported internships. And so we've come a bit late to the game really in terms of thinking about how we do these, but we have started to work both with the BBC and hopefully with other employers in this space, to really enable all the young people that we do have with SEND needs in terms of their journey into employment. So that's the other commitment that we have.
Oh, you're under a bit of pressure now, Ben, aren't you?
So I can give you my cop-out answer and then my real answer if you want. So my cop-out answer is what we do anyway, is that we have got Euroskills coming at the end of the month. We've got national finals where we're going to be celebrating the excellence that's in the apprenticeship system and the providers and the employers and the colleges that are delivering those things. So in September, we'll be taking a team out to Herning to compete against the other European countries, and the year after we're doing that in Shanghai. And we will continue to make sure apprenticeships are at the heart of that, as well as then looking at this excellence piece, so making sure that we are supporting the sector to take the learnings that we've got for international and look at how do you do world-class pedagogy. The slight confession is that we are a member of the 5% Club. I saw Mark here somewhere. But we have just fallen below 5% for the first time in a long time this year. So my commitment is we will get back above. It's a timing issue, Sharon. It wasn't a purposeful thing, but to get back into that 5%, because I think we've got to look at how do we practice what we preach. So that's my commitment.
Brilliant, and thank you for holding us to account. So that brings us to the end of this panel session. So hopefully you'll help me in joining saying thank you to our panel, Fiona, Scarlett, Ricky, Pat and Ben. Thank you everyone, and I now believe it's time for a tea break.